In November 2022, Disney was in disarray under Bob Chapek. Box office numbers were down, Disney Plus was losing billions of dollars, and the company was locked in a feud with the Florida government. Oh, and the TV and cable networks were losing subscribers by the thousands. But amidst all the chaos, the return of the king was nigh. Yes, Bob Chapek was vanquished and Bob Iger became CEO after just a couple of years away from the job. His mission was simple: use his 17 years of Disney experience to turn this ship around. Now, almost a year later, Disney's box office numbers are still down, Disney Plus is still losing billions of dollars, and the company's still fighting with the Florida government. Oh, and TV and cable subscribers are still dropping. Oh yeah, and there's some big Hollywood strikes going on too. Iger was supposed to turn this ship around, and if anything, it's sinking faster. So what happened here? Is Iger failing? Well, a lot of Disney insiders and fans think so. But before making any judgments, it's only fair to consider the context of these fires Iger inherited. And before we go into those fires, it's important to consider how the heck we got here. As we all know, Iger left the CEO position in February 2020. He was coming off a legendary 2019, a year where Disney had 5 movies gross more than $1 billion at the box office. This was the year of Avengers Endgame, Aladdin, Lion King, Toy Story 4, and a couple other blockbusters. It was also the year when Disney Plus debuted, scoring about 26 million subscribers in its first 3 months. So after 15 years as the boss, Iger wanted to go out on top, and as one of the most successful CEOs in America, the company board of directors naturally let him choose his own replacement. He ended up picking Bob Chapek, head of the Parks division at the time, with past success as the head of home video and merchandising. However, this was early 2020. Chapek was only CEO for a few weeks before COVID basically shut the world down. Being CEO of Disney is not an easy job in the first place, but being a first-time CEO during a global pandemic, it has to be a nightmare. Now, to be fair, the pandemic gave every entertainment company a hard time, but it did a number on Disney especially. Theme parks and movie theaters closed, TV and film production shut down for a bit, then restarted with very expensive health protocols. Even sports were paused, which took millions of eyes off ESPN, a big moneymaker for Disney. So you can see how the CEO change happened at about the worst possible time. Now, it would be one thing if this new CEO was actually right for the job. We know now he wasn't. Chapek made a lot of bad decisions during and after the pandemic. There was, for example, the decision to release Pixar films on Disney Plus for free, which devalued the brand into basically a home experience for a lot of people. See the failure of Lightyear, for example, which lost $100 million. There was the decision to release their big movies on Disney Plus for a premium fee, which drastically reduced box office earnings, and it also made piracy a snap, basically. This also caused the great Scarlett Johansson lawsuit of 2021, in which Johansson sued over the streaming release of Black Widow, which breached her contract. This led to a PR storm for Disney, and a popular opinion pretty much turned unanimously against the company. But it doesn't end there. We shouldn't undersell how much trouble Chapek and his decisions put the company in. He also restructured the company right in the middle of the pandemic, creating a whole new division called DMed, in charge of approving budgets for TV and film. This took a lot of creative control away from the creative people responsible for past successes at this creative company. DMed caused major issues with the film and TV production pipelines, and basically threw a wrench between the creative and administrative departments. No one was sure what projects were moving forward or where they would end up. Would they be in theaters like Eternals was? Or free on Disney Plus like Turning Red was? Or paid exclusives on Disney Plus like Mulan was? It was a total mess. And on a personal note, in one interview he downplayed animation as a simple distraction for kids while trying to gas up the live-action remakes. So that was a big red flag for me. And the most famous blunder was when he wandered into a fight with the Florida government over the so-called Don't Say Gay bill back in spring 2022. This bill prevented discussion of gender orientation and identity in public schools, and the whole thing was and still is very controversial. But given how important Disney is to Florida's economy, pretty much everyone expected the company to speak out against the law, like many other companies did, I should say. Bob Iger regularly spoke out on political issues as CEO, and he actually did comment against this bill, independently of course, on his Twitter. But Bob Chapek wasn't an activist like his predecessor. He wanted the company to remain silent on the issue and avoid taking sides. This did not go well with a lot of Disney employees. They protested heavily and basically forced Chapek to release a statement against the law. Now, usually a corporate statement like this would be released and not much would come out of it. But in a complete surprise, the Florida government decided to punish Disney for speaking out against the law. They took over Walt Disney World's special taxing district and threatened even harder punishment if the company didn't back down. Now, it's not like this was all Chapek's fault. I don't like to get political on my channel, but it's obvious the Florida government, and especially the governor Ron DeSantis, were using Disney to score political points. Even today, it's clear this is a First Amendment type issue. I mean, no company should be punished for not supporting a law. So I don't blame Chapek 100% for Florida's overreaction. That said, Chapek still has some blame here. First of all, his indecision made the company look unsure in its position, and therefore weak. And second, he was either unaware or indifferent to how Disney employees would feel about this law before choosing to remain silent about it. And third, and most importantly, he didn't have the networking or negotiating skills needed to manage a tricky situation like this. Iger made mistakes too, but he also knew how to connect with people on a personal and professional level, and compromise when needed. So it's not surprising that he had so many relationships, for example, with many government figures in Florida and the US. Chapek, on the other hand, had none of those skills. And on top of all of that, we finally get to the reason Chapek was let go. See, Chapek was focusing on streaming as Disney's biggest focus. The company threw billions at Disney+, Hulu, and ESPN, with the goal of reaching 230 million subscribers by the end of 2024. Now, for a long time, this goal for any streaming service was simple: get more subscribers and watch your stock price go up. And credit where it's due, Disney Plus grew fast in its first few years under Chapek, peaking at about 164 million subs in October 2022. But in November 2022, Disney reported its earnings for the fourth quarter and the whole fiscal year, and they announced that Disney Plus gained 12 million subscribers in the fourth quarter, which was a good increase for real. But the streaming division reported a loss of $1.5 billion, which was twice as much money as it lost in the same period the year before. Like I said, this used to be a normal thing. Streaming lost money, but as long as you kept increasing your subscriber count, Wall Street rewarded you with a higher stock price. But in this case, Disney was behind the times. After Netflix reported a drop in subscribers back in spring 2022, the streaming game changed. Investors now wanted to see revenue and profits, not subscriber counts. This is why Netflix started showing ads and stopped password sharing this year. They needed more money from each user. But unfortunately, Bob Chapek hit the snooze button on this industry alarm. He kept chasing and promoting subscriber counts, even as Disney Plus continued to lose billions of dollars. So when Chapek tried to present the fourth quarter results as a win, the market was not impressed. The share price dropped hard, and other Disney executives were basically frustrated at how badly Chapek, I should say, messed up. And to top it all off, this was 2 weeks before Strange World bombed at the box office. It ended up losing like $200 million. So all that together, November was a perfect storm of setbacks for Chapek, who was about to face the music. In late November, the Disney board of directors decided enough was enough, and they asked Iger to come back and clean up Chapek's mess. And of course, he accepted, and everyone rejoiced. The shareholders, the employees, the fans. I was pretty shocked when I read the news. It was a surprise to be sure, but a welcome one. We all thought Chapek was the problem and Iger would do his thing and basically put out all these fires. But in hindsight, it wasn't that simple. Now it's easy to think Iger was on a beach somewhere for 2.5 years until Disney shined the Iger signal. But that sort of minimizes Iger's role in creating the whole situation in the first place. See, the CEO succession was botched from the start. For one thing, when Iger stepped down, he never actually left. He remained as chairman of the board until December 21, which was almost 2.5 years after he quit the CEO job. And second of all, he kept control of the creative side of the business. So like film, TV, theme park ideas, stuff like that. On paper, this was supposed to make for a smoother transition, especially in the chaotic COVID era. But in practice, this meant that there were basically two CEOs, and that model worked as well as you would expect. Iger wasn't CEO anymore, but he thought of himself as Chapek's partner and expected to be consulted on major decisions. But Chapek, understandably, didn't see it that way, which caused friction between the two. For example, when Chapek reorganized the company into DMED, like I said, Iger actually hated that idea. And to be fair, it wasn't popular with many in the company, but Iger had no power to stop it, which deepened the tension. And, he couldn't do anything about it. Even though he had a lot of influence, he just wasn't CEO anymore. So of course he couldn't tell Chapek what to do or anything. This arrangement also led to a lot of unnecessary public drama. Remember the Scarlett Johansson episode? The reason the company responded so badly was because Chapek conveniently considered dispute to be a creative issue and tossed it over to Iger. But Iger stuck it to him by staying out of the whole thing. Now Iger was running the creative side of a creative company, so it was hard to tell where his authority stopped. But then again, this was a huge problem that needed a professional response. This was a big lawsuit. But in the end, neither man apologized to Scarlett Johansson, making the company look pretty bad, I'm not going to lie to you. Iger undermined Chapek even after leaving the company in December 2021. Like I said, he tweeted against the Florida bill before Disney did, which set an expectation for Chapek to basically follow, right? Now, I'm not saying that Iger should have kept his mouth shut. He wasn't even an employee at the time. But at the same time, he still had a huge platform, and people still saw him as a Disney guy. I don't agree with how Chapek handled this Florida issue, but Iger speaking out definitely added to his troubles. So by now you may be wondering why Iger left in the first place. Seriously, he clearly liked being CEO. He even jumped at the chance to return last year. There were even rumors I read about, I think in CNBC, describing him as bored in retirement. In the end, only Iger knows why he left. My theory is he expected his power-sharing plan to work a lot smoother than it did. He would have been the shadow CEO while not being true CEO. It's a great way to retire but not fully leave, which I must admit is a pretty nice arrangement. But for whatever reason, Iger wanted to leave. But he was so respected that the board let him choose his own replacement. So, in that case, why did he handpick Chapek? There are many other candidates to choose from, popular ones like Tom Staggs, who was the head of the theme parks until 2016, or like Kevin Mayer, who ran the streaming division. Chapek had success in every division he ran over his career, but he didn't really stand out in any way. He was the boring but safe choice. One theory is Iger did it on purpose to keep his replacement from upstaging him, which I think is a huge stretch, personally. In the end, Iger made the wrong choice. Disney's a creative company that needs a dynamic boss, not like a traditional suit. Oh, Iger also made the mistake of not actually talking to people who worked under Chapek. He just looked at the guy's accomplishments and assumed the best, which was a huge miscalculation for such an accomplished CEO like Iger. You know, it's funny. The CEO before Iger, Michael Eisner, tried to pull off Iger's same shadow CEO plan in 2019 before he left. But back then, the board of directors shot him down, probably because they saw the potential disaster brewing on the horizon. So now we arrive at the present, autumn 2023. Iger's contract runs until 2026, which gives him some time to turn his ship around. So how's he doing so far? Well, he did reverse Chapek's corporate reorganization and killed off DMED, which gave the creative side of the company control of budgets and, distribution again. And that's all good, but it's not enough. Let's take a look at the many fires Iger still has to put out. The most obvious is the box office. You probably know of at least one 2023 Disney flop. There's the third Ant-Man movie, which was the first MCU movie to lose money, by the way. There was The Little Mermaid, which did make money, but way less than other Disney remakes did. There was Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, which grossed almost $400 million, but was so expensive to make that it'll cost Disney $100 million. And then we have something like Haunted Mansion, which grossed $100 million on a budget of $150 million. The only bright spots this year were Guardians 3 and Elemental. And I only say Elemental because it somehow avoided being a total failure and ended up losing a lot less money than people thought it would after it opened in June. I think this slump is the result of depending on franchises and IP so much, which is an Iger strategy, by the way. When you spam Marvel movies and live action remakes and sequels, those can only go so far. If you're going to spam, the movies have to be good, and most of Disney's recent output is just decent. There's trouble in TV as well. Disney's broadcast network, ABC, isn't doing so hot. Its ratings are worse than its competitors CBS and NBC, so its advertising revenue is decreasing. Iger actually shocked me this summer when he said he was open to selling ABC altogether, along with some cable channels like National Geographic and FX. They're even negotiating that sale right now. This is the sort of thing you consider when you have to prioritize the core business. But it's also pretty confusing, see, because ABC does a lot of sports, and selling it would make it harder for ESPN. The leagues could sell their games, for example, to other networks. I don't get why you would keep ESPN without ABC, but there's a reason I'm not a CEO, I guess. Speaking of cable TV subscribers are dropping like flies these days. Now, this isn't only a problem for Disney, but they do have a lot of cable networks. There's Disney Channel, National Geographic, Freeform, FX. The company's biggest moneymaker is ESPN, for crying out loud. They're heavy into cable. Actually, ESPN generates billions in profit for Disney every year, even as the cable audience continues to, shrink. And the cable companies are aware of this. But just this month, Disney and Charter Communications had a very public dispute over affiliate fees, which meant millions of Spectrum customers were blocked from Disney networks for about a week. This was right before the NFL season started, by the way. Imagine getting blacked out from a very popular football game. Sports are the main reason people even watch traditional TV. So this was a big deal. But anyway, the two companies reached a deal. But this is a sign of how shaky cable will be as streaming continues to grow. And speaking of streaming, there's ESPN Plus, which is the streaming sidekick of ESPN. ESPN Plus isn't the full ESPN experience, but it's slowly gaining more sports and events. Still, with so many cable subscribers quitting, the value of the main ESPN is slowly decreasing. The obvious option in this case is to just launch a full ESPN streaming service, but there's still a lot of money in cable, about $10 per subscriber per month straight to Disney. So Iger's dilemma is figuring out if he should sell ESPN off altogether or find a way to make an all-streaming ESPN worth it. Then there's things like the slight drop in attendance at Walt Disney World, most likely because of higher prices and, inflation and stuff like that. And then there's the massive layoffs Iger had to make earlier this year. 7,000 people were let go to save billions of dollars. Now, some of those savings will go toward paying Disney's massive debt from the Fox acquisition in 2019. And the whole Fox merger was Iger's idea, by the way. Heavy acquisition guy. Iger has also continued the fight against Ron DeSantis and the Florida government this year by suing them for their unfair punishment from last year. The state took over Walt Disney World's Special Improvement District, which was kind of a big deal because it was kind of singling out Disney for punishment. And again, this is political, and leading theory is that Disney has a strong case in its lawsuit for a First Amendment violation. I personally don't think this dispute needs to exist. It's obvious this only happened so that the governor could raise his profile for his presidential campaign. And sure enough, and now that his campaign is flopping, there's signs that both him and Disney are ready to end this little fight. It's not like this is an existential crisis or anything, but the fact I'm talking about it at all is a sign of how important Disney is in a cultural sense, and how easy it is to draw unwanted, in this case political attention, if you're, say, a rookie CEO. What else can I tell you? Well, by now you know all about the Hollywood labor strikes, both actors and writers striking for higher wages from streaming services and better protections from AI, amongst other things. Now this involves all the major studios, but Iger is one of the leading negotiators, and he said some pretty disappointing things, like for example, blaming the strikers for disrupting the industry and not being realistic in their requests. Iger used to have a pretty clean public image before this. He was even one of the CEOs who helped end the 2008 writers' strike. But anyway, the strikes are probably ending soon, but now he's trying to walk back his remarks, and I don't think people will forget so easily, strike or not. Now let's talk about the streaming division. It's still losing money. In the 3 months ending on July 1 this year, it lost about $512 million, which is a ton, but less than the same period last year. Remember that for later. So like I said, streaming is supposed to be the focal point of the company, but Disney Plus isn't growing like it once was. Back in the Chapek era, Disney expected at least 230 million subs by the end of 2024. In September this year, they lowered that prediction to like 215 million, which isn't really a good sign. Or I should say, it wouldn't be a good sign in 2021. At this point, it's whatever. Remember, sub count doesn't matter anymore anyway. These days, the goal is to increase revenue, and finally, to make streaming profitable. So like I said earlier, that recent $512 million loss is actually a sign of slow improvement, but this improvement can be faster. And so this year, Iger raised the price of Disney Plus multiple times, and Hulu, and committed to end password sharing like Netflix did. He also added a lower cost option with ads. And finally, as you may have noticed, Disney started removing some content from Disney Plus so they could save on paying residuals and, some other payments. And all this stuff together will no doubt increase revenue and cut costs. But personally, I hate to see it. It was bad when Netflix ended password sharing, and it will still be bad when Disney does it. It was bad when, HBO Max silently removed content, and it's still bad when Disney does it. But this is what it takes for streaming to be profitable, I guess. Iger is looking to expand Disney streaming too, starting with Hulu. Hulu used to be co-owned by a group of major studios, but over time Disney bought out other stakes until now they own 66%, with Comcast/Universal owning the last 33%. Disney plans to buy Comcast's stake this year so they can finally merge Hulu with Disney Plus. Hulu content is already on Disney Plus for most of the world, so this makes a lot of sense. But buying the stake, it's going to cost at least $9 billion, which might be why Iger is looking to sell ABC and some cable channels. And finally, Iger's still looking for his replacement. No one really knows who it'll be, But there are some candidates, like former Parks boss Tom Staggs, or current ESPN boss Jimmy Pitaro. Whoever it is, this time around it should be a lot better. This time, Iger's choosing way more carefully, by actually talking to employees of the people he's interviewing this time. So what's Iger's ultimate plan? The leading theory is that he wants to transform the company, to modernize it, if you will. If he can get rid of some declining assets like ABC or Freeform or like linear TV altogether, it would mean like a new direction for Disney. Remember, the streaming division will eventually be profitable. So this means a change of focus. Without old networks and like normal TV to worry about, it would be like a new kind of media company. It wouldn't have to worry about cable companies anymore either. And truthfully, I see the vision. If Disney does this, they wouldn't be seen as like a legacy media company anymore. They'd be focusing on movies and parks, and most importantly, streaming, like content for streaming. They'd be Netflix with IP and theme parks. So if this is Iger's plan, a lot of the moves I'm telling you throughout this whole video, they make a lot of sense. Honestly, I kind of need them to make sense. I'll tell you why. There are some rumors that this company streamlining is actually being done to make the company easier to sell itself to Apple. Now, for me and many other Disney fans, this is basically a doomsday scenario. This is a 100-year-old studio built on independence. As a matter of fact, it's the only major studio left. The idea of Disney being bought out is kind of nauseating to me, and the fact that Iger even considered it, well, it gets me tilted, man. He knows how bad Warner Brothers is these days after merging so many times, like with Time Warner or like CNN or something. Luckily, Apple isn't known to buy big companies, so this probably won't happen. I mean, it is just a rumor. So, can Iger turn Disney around? It kind of feels like he's washed at this point, but I think Iger will figure it out. The company might have a lot of issues these days, but the leadership has been proactive since the Chapek era. Plus, Iger is still the super successful 17-year CEO. Now, having said that, Iger kind of let me down since his return. And it's not like I was some sort of Iger stan before, but I always thought he was a great CEO and like an actual Disney fan. Like, he's the reason Oswald is even a Disney character anymore. Now, a few years later, after the whole, COVID and stuff, there's a whole like CEO replacement saga that he caused himself. There's like the strike comments he made, and the selling to Apple rumors, which are only rumors, but the fact they're going around at all, like, it is worrying. I don't know. I always have a bad feeling about the whole prioritizing shareholders thing. Nothing is sacred to them. But if there's one thing I can say about Iger, he definitely knows he made a mistake, and he seems to be honestly trying to put the company back on solid ground, which is good. I only hope that he doesn't do anything rash in the process of restoring things. So what can you and me learn from all this? Well, if you're ever a long-term CEO of a billion-dollar company, don't handpick your replacement and then stick around to help him out. It's not going to end well. Well, if you made it this far, thanks for watching. If you want more content like this, please feel free to like and subscribe. And that's that. See you later.